It was close to midnight when my phone started vibrating against the nightstand. At first, I thought it was an alarm, or maybe one of those spam calls that never seemed to stop. But when I saw his name, my whole body went still. David, my best friend's husband. We weren't close, not really. Just polite smiles at dinners, a few shared jokes when she wasn't around. The kind of quiet familiarity that forms when two people orbit the same person but never each other. So why was he calling me? At 11:47 p.m., I hesitated, staring at the screen until it almost stopped ringing. Then I answered, "Hello." For a moment, I only heard his breathing. Not heavy, but uneven, like he'd been trying not to cry. "Elena." His voice cracked on my name. "Yeah," I said softly, sitting up. "What's wrong? Is something wrong with Maya?" He didn't answer that. Not right away. I could hear the faint hum of traffic through his window, maybe his car radio, turned low. Then he said something I didn't expect, something that made my stomach turn cold. I just didn't know who else to call. That's the kind of sentence that never ends well. He sounded broken, the kind of quiet that doesn't come from anger, but from exhaustion. I could picture him sitting in his car outside their house, gripping the steering wheel, trying to find the right words. "David, you're scaring me," I whispered. "What happened?" He exhaled, shaky. "She's not here. She left." For a moment, I didn't understand. "Left where?" "I don't know. She just packed a bag. She said she couldn't do this anymore." I swung my legs off the bed, half expecting this to be some kind of twisted misunderstanding. Maya, my oldest friend, the one who used to call me every Sunday just to talk about nothing, wouldn't just disappear. But the sound in his voice wasn't fake. It wasn't dramatic. It was hollow, and that's what scared me most. "David," I said slowly, "did you two fight?" He gave a short, humorless laugh. "We always fight, but not like this." The silence that followed felt heavier than his words. I could hear something clinking, maybe a bottle against glass, maybe his ring tapping against the dashboard. "She said I was in love with someone else," he whispered. My throat went dry. I waited for him to say who, to explain, but he didn't. Then he said my name again, softer this time. "Elena." And in that single breath, I realized something was wrong. Not just with them, but with us. Because the way he said my name didn't sound like a man looking for comfort. It sounded like someone confessing. Before I could answer, the call went silent, cut off mid-breath. I stared at my reflection in the dark phone screen, heart racing. Was this a mistake? Or the start of something I couldn't take back? I didn't sleep after that call. The silence in my apartment felt too thick, like the air itself was listening. I kept replaying David's voice in my head, the way he said my name, the pause before it. It wasn't something you could unhear. By morning, sunlight was crawling across the floor, pale and uncertain, and I still hadn't moved from the couch. My phone lay on the coffee table, the screen black. No new messages, no missed calls. I wanted to believe it had all been a mistake, that he'd been drunk or half asleep or just scared and needed someone to talk to. But then I thought about Maya, and that uneasy feeling twisted tighter. Maya and I had known each other since college. We'd been through everything. Heartbreaks, late-night study sessions, the kind of laughter that comes only after crying together first. She was the kind of friend who remembered birthdays without needing Facebook reminders. When she met David, I was happy for her. Truly, he was calm, kind, a little too careful with his words, the opposite of every man who'd broken her heart before. But over the years, something in her calls changed. They became shorter, distracted. She'd say things like, "He's been distant lately," or "I think he wants something different." I thought she meant a new job, a change of scenery. I never imagined she meant someone else. And definitely not me. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. I caught myself checking my phone again. Still nothing. By noon, I gave in and texted him, "Did you find her?" No reply. I tried to work. I teach literature classes online, and my students had submitted essays about longing and loss. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every sentence about love felt heavier than usual, as if it knew something I didn't want to admit. Around 4 in the afternoon, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, David was standing there. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Eyes red, jaw unshaven, shirt wrinkled. He held a folded piece of paper in one hand. I didn't know where else to go, he said quietly. I stepped aside, unsure if I should. My pulse went slow. Inside, he placed the paper on my table. I recognized Maya's handwriting before I even touched it. She left this, he murmured. I didn't open it right away. My fingers hovered above the crease, afraid of what was inside. David, why bring it to me? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment, too long. Then he said, because it's not addressed to me. My heart dropped. There in the middle of the envelope, written in her neat, looping script, was my name. Elena. The letters sat between us like something alive. I didn't open it right away. The paper looked fragile, as if it might fall apart if I breathed too hard. David kept pacing near the window, his hand in his hair, his expression unreadable. Did you read it? I asked finally. He shook his head. No, I couldn't, but you brought it here, because I didn't know what else to do. His voice cracked on that last word. I could feel something closing in between us, a mix of guilt, confusion, and something else neither of us wanted to name. I unfolded the letter carefully. Maya's handwriting was exactly the same as it had been in college. Neat, deliberate, every word controlled. But the message underneath felt anything but. Elena, I don't know how to say this out loud. You've always been the person who saw things in me no one else did. Maybe that's why this feels like betrayal. I can't stay here pretending not to see what's between you two. I'm leaving before I start hating either of you. I read it twice before I looked up. My mouth went dry. She thinks, David nodded slowly. I know. I couldn't find the right words. There weren't any. I wanted to say she's wrong, but even saying that would sound like I was trying too hard. And maybe, deep down, she wasn't completely wrong. We'd never crossed any lines. Not really, but they had been small moments. Shared looks, too long pauses. A laugh that lasted a second too long. I'd ignored them, brushed them off as harmless. But apparently, Maya hadn't. I didn't mean for this to happen, I said quietly. David looked at me then. Really looked, and I wished he hadn't. There was something raw in his eyes. Neither did I. Outside, rain started tapping against the window. The sound filled the silence between us, soft but relentless. I folded the letter again, slower this time. You should go home, I said, though my voice didn't sound steady. She might come back. He didn't move. You think she will? I didn't know, but I said yes anyway. He nodded, slipped the letter into his jacket, and left without another word. When the door closed, I stood there for a long time, listening to the rain. On the counter, my phone buzzed, a new message. From an unknown number. You shouldn't have answered his call. I froze. The message wasn't from David, and it wasn't from Maya either. I stared at the screen, reading the message again. You shouldn't have answered his call. No name, no photo, just those 7 words sitting there like a warning. My first instinct was to think it was Maya, but something about the tone, the cold precision of it, didn't sound like her. Maya was emotional, impulsive when she was hurt, but never cruel. This felt calculated. I typed a reply. Who is this? No response. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shining under the streetlights. I could see my reflection faintly in the window. Pale, tense, uncertain. I'd been through my share of difficult friendships, but this felt different, heavier. By morning, I couldn't sit still. I went to Maya and David's house. Their place was quiet, the curtains drawn. David's car was in the driveway, covered in a thin layer of rain. When he opened the door, he looked even worse than yesterday. Elena, he said softly, like he wasn't sure if saying my name was allowed anymore. I got a message, I said, stepping inside. Last night. From someone. He frowned. From Maya? I don't know. He rubbed his temples, sighed. She's not answering me either. I called her sister, her co-workers. Nobody's seen her. I looked around their living room. Everything was exactly how she'd left it. Her favorite throw on the couch, the half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. It felt wrong, too quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. I pulled the letter from his jacket, rereading it again under the dull morning light. You've always been the person who saw things in me no one else did. Those words twisted in my mind. I remembered last summer, the 3 of us at the lake, the way David had helped me carry the picnic basket while Maya took pictures. She'd caught one of us laughing, our faces turned toward each other, unaware of her camera. Maybe she'd seen something even I hadn't. David's voice broke the silence. You think she's trying to punish us? I hesitated. I think she's hurt, and she wants us to know it. He looked at me, eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Elena, what if she doesn't come back? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced down, then froze. I stepped closer. What is it? He turned the screen toward me. Another message. Same number as mine. You both deserve this. The color drained from his face. And for the first time since that night, I realized this wasn't just about love or betrayal anymore. It was about something much darker. David's hand trembled slightly as he lowered his phone. We stood there in his living room, surrounded by the faint smell of coffee and rain. Neither of us spoke. The message still glowed between us. You both deserve this. It felt like a sentence. Finally, I whispered, we should call the police. He shook his head immediately. And tell them what? That we got 2 anonymous texts? They'd think we're overreacting. Maybe, I said quietly, but what if we're not? David turned away, pacing again. His shirt was still wrinkled from the night before. I could see the exhaustion pulling at him, but beneath it, something else, fear, maybe guilt. I wasn't sure anymore. I've been getting messages for a week, he said suddenly. I blinked. What? He looked up, hesitating. Before Maya left. Weird ones. Things like she knows and you can't hide forever. I thought it was spam. Why didn't you tell her? Because I didn't think it mattered, he said, rubbing his eyes. I thought it was someone trying to scare me. Now, he trailed off, his voice fading into the quiet. A cold shiver ran through me. You think she sent them? He didn't answer, and that silence said enough. We sat down across from each other, the letters still on the table between us. The edges were starting to curl. I stared at Maya's handwriting until the words blurred. I keep thinking, I said softly, if she really believed there was something between us, maybe I made her feel alone. David's voice cracked. It's not your fault, isn't it? He looked up, meeting my eyes, and for a moment I saw everything he wasn't saying. The long pauses, the almost confessions, the weight of things we'd both ignored. The doorbell rang. We both jumped. David went to answer it. I stood near the doorway, heart pounding. A delivery man stood there, holding a small cardboard box. For you, he said, glancing between us. No return address. David took it, signed, and closed the door. We opened it together on the table. Inside was a single photograph, printed on thick, glossy paper. It was that same picture from last summer, the one at the lake. David and I laughing, unaware of the camera. But this time, someone had drawn a red circle around our faces, and underneath, in the same looping handwriting as the letter, was a line. Now you see what I saw. My stomach dropped. David sank into the chair, speechless. I reached for the photo, my hands shaking when I noticed something else, faintly visible behind the image like an imprint from the printer. Numbers. A timestamp. It wasn't from last summer. It was dated 2 days ago. I looked up at David, my voice barely a whisper. She's watching us. The photo shook in my hands. 2 days ago. That meant someone had taken it recently. Not last summer, not from any old memory. Someone had been close enough to capture us through a window, or maybe outside his house. David ran a hand through his hair. This can't be her. She wouldn't do something like this. I want to believe that too. But the writing, the way she knew what we'd tried so hard not to say, it was all too specific, too personal. I took a step back, trying to breathe. The room felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in. We have to find her, I said, before this gets worse. David nodded, already reaching for his keys. She has an old cabin near the cliffs. She goes there when she needs space. We drove in silence, rain streaking across the windshield. The sky was gray and heavy, as if it already knew what we were about to find. Neither of us spoke. There was too much to say, and none of it would help. When we reached the cabin, the air smelled of salt and pine. The door was slightly open, creaking in the wind. Maya, I called, stepping inside. No answer, just the sound of the waves crashing below. The place looked lived in, a half-empty mug, a sweater on the chair. Then I noticed a camera on the table, the screen still glowing faintly. David picked it up, scrolling through the photos. His face went pale. Every picture was of us, Me walking to my car, him locking his door, the two of us standing too close by the porch. Each one more recent than the last. She's been watching us, he whispered, all this time. And then, from the back room, a floorboard creaked. We froze. Maya, he said, voice shaking. A shadow moved near the doorway. And then she stepped out. Her eyes were red, but her expression calm. You came, she said quietly. Maya, please. I started. We didn't, she raised a hand. I know. I wanted you to see what it looked like from my side. How easy it is to misunderstand what's never said. David took a step toward her. You scared us. Her lips trembled. I scare myself. She set the camera down on the table. I needed you both to stop pretending. Maybe now you can. Before either of us could answer, she walked past us, out the door, into the rain. We stood there, speechless, the sound of waves filling the silence. The photo from the box lay between us again, faces circled in red. But this time, the ink had started to run, bleeding softly into the paper, like everything between us, finally blurring into something we couldn't define anymore. Rain blurred the glass as we watched Maya disappear down the narrow path, her figure shrinking until the mist swallowed her completely. Neither of us moved for a long time. The air inside the cabin felt heavy, full of words that didn't belong to anyone anymore. The camera still sat on the table, its last image frozen on the screen, the one she'd taken from the window. Finally, David spoke, his voice low. I should go after her. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what either of us would say if he did. Apologies? Explanations? Some things didn't fit into language anymore. She just wanted the truth, I said quietly. He turned to me, tired eyes softening. And what is that, Elena? For once, I didn't have an answer. Maybe the truth wasn't that we'd done something wrong. Maybe it was that we'd felt something and refused to face it until someone else forced us to. I picked up the photograph, the one with the red circle, and slipped it back into the box. You should keep this, I said. He shook his head. No, you should. Maybe it'll remind us what happens when we stop talking. There was a kind of peace in his voice now, fragile but real. Outside, the sound of the sea grew louder, waves breaking against the cliffs like distant applause. We locked the cabin door behind us and walked to the car in silence. The rain had softened to a drizzle, and the air smelled clean again. Halfway down the road, I saw her car, parked by the overlook. David slowed, but didn't stop. We both knew she needed to be alone. When he dropped me home, he didn't come inside. He just rested his hand on the steering wheel, eyes fixed ahead. She'll come back, he said, almost to himself. I want to believe him. That night, I placed the box with the photo in my drawer and turned off my phone. For the first time in days, I slept, not peacefully, but without fear. Weeks later, Maya called. Her voice was calm, distant but steady. She said she was staying with her sister, trying to figure things out. Before she hung up, she said something that stayed with me. You know, Elena, sometimes love isn't about being chosen. It's about learning when to let go. After the call, I sat by the window, watching the sun break through the clouds. The world outside felt quiet again. Not empty, just different. I never heard from David after that. Maybe they found a way back to each other. Maybe they didn't. But the silence that followed wasn't painful anymore. It was just honest. And sometimes that's the only kind of ending that feels true.